All right, Cassidy. Welcome, Cassidy, everybody.
Hi, my name is Cassidy, and I'm a junior, and this poem doesn't have a title, but it's about having an invisible disability. I tell you I'm disabled, and you tell me, no, you're not. But you don't see the amount of energy it takes for me to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. You don't feel the pain I experience walking from class to class. You don't hear my lungs giving out after going up the stairs. You just assume I'm lazy when I use the elevator. And don't call me lucky when I tell you I'm excused from gym, because I would do anything to be able to cheer and play basketball again. And don't call me lucky when I tell you I can park on campus, because I almost passed out walking to Brainerd. And don't call me lucky when I tell you I have an elevator pass, because while you're increasing your ability in sports, I'm losing my ability to walk. I wish you understood the struggles I face on a daily basis, because if you did, you'd understand I'm far from lucky. And I am disabled, because not all disabilities are visible. So when I tell you I'm disabled, please don't reply with, no, you're not. Thank you.
Whew. That's what it's all about right there. Honesty about life, getting up here, sharing yourself, being vulnerable. It's kind of a theme that runs throughout Writers Expo. I hear from so many people who get up here how it's not easy, right? Like, I've been up here before shaking, other people get up here shaking. Cassidy, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, another round of applause. That's great. It's totally appropriate. All right, Regan, your turn. Regan Thompson, everybody.
Hi, I'm Regan Thompson, and I will be presenting a short nonfiction piece called The Single Story. When you think of ADHD, what comes to mind? There isn't a clear picture of it. Many people often picture someone with a temper, someone who blurts out whatever they want without thinking, someone who struggles in school because they are lazy, disorganized, or don't bother to pay attention in class, someone who doesn't work as hard, doesn't care as much, isn't quite at the same mental level as other normal kids. While some children with ADHD may demonstrate these symptoms, that doesn't mean all will, or that a certain trait will look the same in different people. I don't know about anybody else, but this is my truth. In my experience, it is automatically assumed that a child with ADHD cannot be as successful as other children without assistance or medication. They assume that because this child has ADHD that they don't have the capacity to be as intelligent, creative, or hardworking as other children, when in actuality, they don't know any of these things until they meet the child. I am a student with intent of ADHD, which presents differently in different people. For me, I tend to lose focus when I'm doing something that I'm not very engaged in. This causes me to spend a much longer time on assignments and homework than most other students, or sometimes miss instructions in class when the teacher is talking. But despite this, I've always been a very successful student. I never talked while the teacher was talking. I was never disruptive or impolite. My grades were excellent. In elementary school, I was even invited to reading enrichment. It took until 5th grade. Why was it that it had taken so long for someone to notice that I was gifted enough in this area? I learned to read when I was 4 and was 2 grade levels above the average child in reading since I started school. My teachers just never thought I could handle a challenge like that because I had a disability. They figured keeping up with the other kids was challenge enough. When I entered 6th grade with a clean slate and no reputation and was put in accelerated LA Lit, the teacher was constantly worried about me at the beginning of the year. Did I need help with this? Did I understand the directions on that? Did I know what to do here? I wanted to scream at her, "How do you think I got into this class, lady?" I wasn't given a chance to make a good first impression on my teacher. My diagnosis next to my name on a piece of paper already made my first impression for me, and for the beginning part of the year, tainted my relationship with her until she learned more about me. Before this, she had apparently assumed that a child with ADHD was not fit to take her higher level class. And this not only offended me, it made me feel kind of lonely. If I didn't fit into how people saw kids with ADHD, but I wasn't like the normal kids, then where was my place in the world? That question I began to ask myself, and the single story others had created for me intensified when I was in 7th grade. I had never struggled in any of my classes before, but social studies was a real challenge. My overall grade in this class was a C, while all the others were A's, and the teacher did not help. In my time before this and after, including now, I'd never gotten a C on a report card. My teacher believed I wasn't trying hard enough to study and pay attention, and I felt he didn't really understand my style of learning or do much to help me out when he noticed I was struggling. His class either consisted of writing pages and pages of notes so fast I was convinced that my hand would wither and fall off at the wrist, or him droning on for 45 minutes in his very soft and low, sleep-inducing voice. My grade was barely passing. I daydreamed for an entire period of the day. I believed that I was growing out of control. The solution was clear. I would take medication. The day I had first taken that pill, I remember very clearly. I was sitting in my 4th period class. Of course, this happened to be my social studies class. I was staring at my tall, hollow plastic water bottle. It was about 16 ounces, and I had drunk the whole thing in less than 10 minutes. My tongue, probing my mouth for any last bits of moisture, felt like sticky sandpaper against the rough, dry roof of my mouth. I could feel my chest throbbing when my heart pounded against it, hear the blood beating in my ears. My breathing was in a ragged, unnaturally rapid rhythm, and my mind raced uncontrollably. My face was a sheet of white, a medication-induced panic attack. I either needed a heart transplant or a drink of water. Since I was pretty sure the middle school nurse's office didn't specialize in surgery, I went with the section option. Can I get a drink of water? I rasped weakly to the teacher after 15 minutes of feeling like the cliché explorer hero wandering through the desert for hours. No, he glared at me. Of course the answer was no. In his eyes, I was problematic, lazy, and passive. That must be my problem, since I had ADHD. I didn't finish my classwork in the allotted 45 minutes. I had a C in his class. I did poorly on tests. Why would I, of all children, deserve to grab a quick drink from the hallway? Thankfully, I did not pass out and managed to suffer through the next half hour of class before sprinting to the nurse's office. But the experience stuck with me. Since then, my views of myself and my diagnosis have changed. Even though people had doubted me and misjudged me, I realized that I was the only one putting the label on myself, the only one that really mattered. I had the power to change other people's views, and more importantly, my own, about who I was. So I made some changes. I swore to myself that I would never take medication again. I would never box myself into a single story again. I sought out people who had similar experiences to mine. And most importantly, at every opportunity I had, I worked to define myself as the hardworking, diligent, creative person I was. When I was in 8th grade, one brilliant, fantastic teacher gave me an award for the passion I showed for writing and literature in her class at the end of the year. I still remember sprinting up to the stage for my award. I still have it perched on top of my bookshelf to this day. And now, more than ever, I realize just how much I earned it. I wasn't any more gifted, talented, or hardworking in 8th grade than the year before. It just took the right person to see it, and for me to believe it about myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Regan. Yeah, we talk a lot, I feel, in the English department about windows and mirrors, right? Like pieces of literature that allow you to, like you're saying, see that not every person's the same, right? There's no single story, and every look into another person gives you something to resonate with, and yet also kind of an insight into that person's life experience. I think that's just, it's such a great example. So yeah, I thank you for that. And can we just give Regan another round of applause? All right, so speaking of windows and mirrors, speaking of being vulnerable, our presenter today represents all of that. I have been personally very appreciative being able to read her book of poetry. I don't know how much you guys have been able to see any of it yet, but you will hear from her today. Let me go ahead and introduce her. She is a former elementary school teacher, but she is also a poet, a playwright, and a performer. Her poems have gained over 2 million views on YouTube and have won her a National Underground Poetry Championship. Her debut book of poems, just mentioned, Even the Saints Audition, won an award for Best New Poetry Collection by a Chicagoan in 2019. She has co-created and hopefully, still going to co-host once COVID is over, the Big Kids Slam, a monthly poetry show in Chicago. And she has given voice not only to a character in Jackbox video games' Madverse City, but also a character in the upcoming Cartoon Network animation series Batu. Please welcome the very talented Raych Jackson.
I'm gonna be here for a bit, and then I'm gonna go back there to. We're gonna look at some poems, and then I'm gonna have some answers for your questions. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm hollering because I'm very expressive, and I'm just like, hey, that's her. She just bleached her eyebrows. So my name is Raych Jackson. I'm from Chicago. And I shared this in the other periods, but I'll share it again because it tickles me. I am 30, and when Google was becoming a thing, we were all searching like everything about Google, right? We were searching our names, we were searching our favorite celebs, whatever. But when you typed in Raych Jackson, Andrew Jackson's, the president, his wife popped up. And then I was devastated, right? And I was like, no one's gonna know who I am. Like if I ever become rich or famous, everyone's gonna always think Andrew Jackson's wife. So I put a Y in my name. I mean, like, why not, right? We rename. I think that like, one of the weirdest things is when people be like anti-changing your name, like, it's my name, I can change it. So I put a Y in my name, and people call me Raych already. And so, well, this is, before I did some noteworthy things. Then it became this thing where people could find my work. And it's very exciting because that's also what I just do, right? So I'm an educator. I taught in Chicago Public Schools for 4 years. I taught third grade for 4 years, then looped the last year, my fifth year, with fourth graders. And I perform, I write plays, and I also am just really, I love social media marketing. Like, 10 years ago, working and to get paid to tweet wasn't a thing, but it literally is, and it's really fun. So like, that little story I just told you about throwing a Y in my name to be marketable is like a real thing that companies do all the time. And so, yeah, I wrote a book, and it's called Even the Saints Audition, and it talks about growing up with religious trauma, growing up in a household with substance abuse, and just also, a young black girl growing into herself. And before I read some poems, and this time, AV team, I'm on it. Like last time I messed up and they've been holding me down. But I'm gonna leave you with like 3 takeaways. So my first takeaway is that like whatever avenue of art you do, it is gonna connect with someone. And I think that like sometimes, for me, I'm trying to work better. I'm trying to do better at speaking for myself. When I'm writing something, right, I'm like, oh my God, not everyone's gonna identify with being a black, queer writer from Chicago that has religious trauma and substance abuse issues, right? Or a family with substance abuse issues. However, if you checked one box, as my poem started rolling out for my book, I found that if one person connected to one thing, maybe it's the growing up with a family with addiction or religious trauma, then they would really connect to my work. So whatever avenue of work of art that you do. We talked about in the last periods designing clothes or music. It's gonna connect with someone, and you're not alone, and that's what actually excites me. Like, I'm literally gonna go home and write about my puppy, and right then someone's like, oh, she got a puppy, I can connect, and that's a real thing. The second thing is that fighting for your creativity is mad important, right? So when you're releasing art into the world, people are gonna have their opinions, and not everyone is gonna like your work. That is a terrible thing that I had to realize. Not everyone is going to like my work. Oh, well, I like it. So once you get that out your head, it is what it is. And so for me, I share the story that I had to fight for this book cover hard for my publisher, right? When you write a book, they set you up with a creative artist, and they're like, show me your poems, and I'm gonna visualize something. And I just did not like it. It was black and white. It was like, a looming figure walking into a church. And I was kind of like, okay, I understand that some of the poems are serious, but I still want this bright image, one, to be my cover, but I still feel hopeful at the end of the book. And so I actually found another artist, and he made this for me. But I feel like that story can touch on to whatever artist collaborations that you have, right? Where someone's not gonna like it, or someone might have a suggestion that you just don't agree with. So if you feel like, actually, for me, I was like, actually, I hate this cover. I like this cover more. I want this cover. It's yours. It's your project. So now whenever someone shares my book, I'm like, yeah, like that's my work. And the last thing, and then we're gonna jump into it, is rants are poems. So if you're ever like, oh my God, I hate this so much, I'm gonna write it down. That's a poem. I think that a lot of times people think poetry as roses are red, or it's like this super intense structure, and that could be true. However, in order to get your thoughts out onto a paper, it doesn't have to be this super, cursive writing with a quill pen or the ink pen. Like, it doesn't have to be super fancy. It could be a rant that just blurts out your mind and into a poem. And we're gonna actually start with a rant that I turned into a poem for an example. All right? So, let me check my time. Oh my gosh, okay. I don't have as much time with you. It's okay. So I know this is a surprise to you all, but I happen to be bald head. You were like, whoa, like, that's crazy. I didn't notice. But in the religion I grew up in, hair is very sacred. You don't touch it. The women do not cut their hair. They do not dye it. You can get a little style off if you want to, but it's like a real intense thing to cut your hair. So when I was like 24, 25, I asked my mom for permission. And as you all may do, you asked for something that you knew you was gonna do already. I was gonna cut my hair regardless, but like as far as like the culture, I asked for permission. And my mom, oh man, like when I tell you, you would have thought that I told her that I was just like doing some serious criminal activity. She was devastated. Like, she was like, you're gonna do what? Like, you're gonna cut off your hair? Like, whatever, you're not pretty. Like, just really equating like hair to masculinity. It was like a whole thing. And so I wrote this, it was a rant that I turned into a poem. And it's called Church Girl Defends Her Haircut. I remind them Samson was weak well before his cut. Set his strength in fragile strands. Faith that strong is bound to leave you chopped. Got the whole world convincing you I need more. Contorted Rapunzel, eager to walk in storms now. Bald weeping willow, still a decoration. Still bite and roar, laced with a neck roll. Ain't a lion still a lion without his mane? Thank you. And I'm not leaving, I'm literally going there. Okay, now the next one is Ode to My Bald Spots. And we will talk about it in a second, but literally last period, I just ran through it and forgot to say it. Is it on the next slide? Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That is so cool. Okay, so I'm gonna read this poem in a second, but I'm gonna talk about it. So basically, at this point in my life, I cut off all my hair. I'm 24, 25. I'm in the peak mid-20s, you know what I'm saying? I'm a grown woman, got my own apartment, my own car, just really feeling myself. And unfortunately, on both sides of my ears, you can't see because, chemicals, and I just bleached my hair again. I have like 2 major bald spots above my ears. And what that came from is my mom just like she was really combing my hair, you know, she really was just trying to make sure her daughter's hair was did, all of these things. And once you start really like staying and combing at the same spot, the hair comes out. And so unfortunately, I have bald spots over my ears. So can you imagine my surprise where I'm just really the talk of the town in my head, you know, shaking my non-existent hair, but boom, bald spots. And so then there's this shame that I feel. Like, I'm like devastated at this point where I'm like, well, I guess I gotta grow my hair back out because not everyone can know. But instead, I kind of really had to tackle that. I think that sometimes with insecurities, there's this thing that you just, no one should talk about it. Like, never mind, no one's gonna talk about it. I just, you know, let's ignore it. And I kind of didn't wanna do that, right? So I wrote an ode to the bald spots. And so what an ode is, if you are unfamiliar, is it's essentially a love poem for like an object, ode to my iPhone, ode to my dirty Vans, ode to French fries with a little bit of salt, and then the ketchup on the side, but not on top because I don't like a mess. Like, it could be anything, right? But for this time, I chose one of my insecurities, which is an ode to my bald spots. And so before I read it, I want you to also look at the spaces. Those are intentional. So if we have more time, or if we, you know, y'all want to pull me aside, I could talk about form poetry for hours, because that's my thing, and visual poetry, right? If I'm talking about spaces above my ears, I'm going to add the spaces to my poems. And so that's why it's kind of like, you'll see these heavy suggestions, and the placement is also important. The main place, I'll say, is right here, where it says beauty, and then its space is the naps. So keep that in mind. I'm gonna read the poem. You can definitely read along up here, and it makes me excited because I'm glad you can see it. It's also one of my favorite pieces. So this is the ode to the bald spots above my ears. I never asked for them, obviously. Pools of smooth skin, open spaces shining from the grease. I brush my hair quicker. My bald spots make it easier for me to slide on my glasses. I smothered them under curtains of perms and braids, told them it was their fault that everyone picks on me at school. My poor, undeserving splotches, formed by my mother's desperate fingers. Can't rip out beauty from the naps. Beauty is the naps. Every crooked tooth comb that tore through the clusters is dead to me. Resilient blotches will always live on, have more room to settle. A country pulled out of the unwanted, my fashionable traumas. Glinting battle wounds I show off now. Proof of all I had to take to be acceptable. Tombstones set above each ear to mark where my hair was mangled and uprooted, an anthem I always hear. Whoop, whoop. Thank you, thank you. So, you know, I think literally of the three takeaways, if you only take away this one that rants our poems, like if you're ranting to yourself and you write it down, that's literally a poem. I really mean that. This next piece, well, let me see some hands, and this is serious. How many people watch Criminal Intent? Nobody watch Criminal Intent? Spencer Reed, y'all don't like Spencer? Oh, okay, all right. Get a little shy hands. Okay, from the front. I'm like, now y'all know y'all watch Spencer Reed, because I watch Spencer Reed now. I mean, Criminal Intent featuring Spencer Reed, right? You know, this next poem came from me watching an episode of Criminal Intent. If you are familiar with the show, with the world's most beautiful, handsome Spencer Reed, they start off an episode with a quote. And it's a quote that dances on the subject of the episode. But this time I was watching Criminal Intent, and it was a literal quote, and I paused the episode, wrote it down, and was like, this is bars on bars. And I wrote a poem off of that. So this next piece is Dragon. And thank you. Visually, you'll see these dashes, and what they are a beat. You know, originally when I first wrote the poem, it was a long form poem, like it was long and it was like spaces, but I ended up moving them next to each other, and just like a visual slash, it's like a beat, and each phrase or word in between these slashes are a poem in itself. So it's like a poem in a poem, inception type of situation. So I'm gonna read this. This poem is gonna take a little dip in our mood, and then I promise I'm gonna bring it back up. But if we're talking about like one of my favorite pieces in the book, it's here. I'm gonna read it, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit more. The quote: "Fairy tales do not tell children the dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell the children that the dragons can be killed." G.K. Chesterton. "We build bunk beds out of couches, stack cousins on brothers, on nieces. Leather from the couch's seats forces your cheek to be smooth. It is a lullaby. Massaging faces and ears drowns out stampedes of search parties looking for your mother under the nearest crack rock. There's a vein on your ankle, puffing its chest out for attention. We all have one. Royal blue hidden entryways that elevate our father's thrones even higher. Parading the insides of our elbows during family reunions. No need for long sleeves. Admire the crevices between our toes. Play games with us. Hide and seek with track marks. Hot potato with relatives' couches. Force your cheeks to be smooth. We welcomed cloaked addiction. It is a thread that sews us together. Without it, we'd be separated, exposed, strung out. Monster. I know where you hide. Syringes give you neck cramps. Instead, spread your wings over well-groomed adults and silent children littered with blisters for mopping their mother's face prints off the floor. Why do you need your spoon so much? It's family dinner time. Put photos up over the reminders. Bedtime stories for the couch. Long tales rock you to sleep. I'm sorry you believe us. Practice fairy tales about killing dragons, winged narratives circling exactly how she died. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll pause it, right? Because, dragon is a slang term for a specific substance. And what I do in this poem is I do play a lot with an image of like a mythical creature. And then I do want to go back to the slashes because this was originally it was originally a slam poem it was a page poem that came to slam poem, and it's a page poem again. But right here, it's the thread that sews us together. Without it, we'd be separated, exposed, strung out. I think that I could talk forever about visual poetry, or like how everything in the world is a poem, right? But each beat is something that is really important to the poem, important to me because I wrote it, but important to the poem until we get to that final strung out. And so that's a little bit about like my favorite poem in the book. So thank you for letting me share that. Got a little chills because it's a little deep poem, but we're gonna raise it back up. Y'all ready to raise it back up? I'm gonna go back to here. All right. So, okay. I had a couple minutes before I'm gonna do some questions, and still on the lines of the question, what inspires you? That someone asked me. Everything inspires me, and I'm one of those, you can't tell now, but I am one of those long-nailed baddies. Like, I love long acrylics. I love the colorfulness, expressive of it. Actually, you can tell because, fun fact, you see it in the picture, right? Fun fact, that set glows in the dark, right? So, like, that's how extra I am. You thought I was extra just because of the bleached eyebrows? No, I literally had glow-in-the-dark fingernails during that picture. And I did a lot of this, right? And so, my friend did a workshop on vices, and she was talking about like how we have a lot of things in our lives that are like glitz and glam, they don't serve us. So anybody out there that has them acrylics, they're not the easiest to live with, right? Well, maybe you're just better than me, right? But like a pop can or buttoning a shirt is always an issue. Tying your shoe, depending on how long it is an issue. And so I actually wrote a poem about having long nails and how, even though you're a baddie, it's hard. But yeah, I love that this picture is up.
And also, you can literally see the bald spots. That's actually hilarious. I should have pointed that out, but bam, you can see it, because I'm like, blonde right now. See, I wasn't lying to y'all. All right, even my nails hurt me. My nails fall in love with everything but my hands. They commit to slam doors and cracks in the couch, quietly rip themselves from my fingers while my blood makes the sound. I try to keep my nails on with super glue and enlist keys to pry open pop cans. Change the shape my nails naturally grow into. I am their sun. Shave the sides of their heads. I am their shadow. Still, they want out, even when I tend to their needs before mine. I dress my nails in glitter without asking and paint them the color I deserve to feel. No costume can make them belong to me, and I hoped they'd miss me. Instead, they giggle under dust piles with my skin attached to their backs, mauled plastic chunks hiding in the corners of my apartment, thrilled to be free. Thank you. We'll do one more. So, if you're like, wow, she's kind of extra, wait till you hear this poem. Because after I was writing about losing a broken nail, because I wrote about breaking a nail, I kind of went into myself and I was like, I wonder how the broken fingernail feels. No one who's not an artist thinks like that, right? No one's like, God, look at that, a broken fingernail. I'm gonna write a poem about it. So this is a poem from the broken fingernail, and this is a sestina kind of. A sestina is a form of poetry where you repeat a lot of the same words and they have to go in a certain order. And so you'll hear some of the same words. This is from the broken fingernail. It must be nice to always be part of the family and to never question if your presence is welcome. I am a rotating disappointment, a perfect tune until the records scrape, trying to make you see beauty in the jagged, the rich dirt as gold. Dare I compare myself to gold? I don't have anyone who claims me as family. No one is praised for being jagged, and even the sword is smooth on both sides and still welcome, despite the cut, despite the scrape. And when I'm perfect again, I will be accepted by my family. Only beings that look the same on these hands can be welcome. Shine me until I am sparkling gold, mold my parts and create a family. Finally, I can have results from the scrape, rub myself against her hand until she too can feel the jagged. Wonder if the pain is always worth the family, and what happens if you can't reshape disappointment. Throw acetone on what pretends to be gold and watch the beauty burn away with the welcome. And after the appointment, she'll always show off what's no longer jagged. Effortless hand motions, cutting through disappointment. And if her hand waves fast enough in the blur, we all might look like family. Thank you. All right, we got one poem, final poem, and then I'm gonna open up for the Q&A. And if you don't have any questions for me, then I'm gonna ask you all what you all are listening to right now, because I'm just trying to be hip and down, Lil Whoop-de-Woo or whoever y'all listen to, put me on. Because these young kids, they be dropping bangers, and I like the music. I can't hold you. When people are like, mumble rap isn't music, I'm kind of like, boo, grow up. All right. It Is Written is a poem that I wrote because there's a scripture in the Bible. My mom named me Rachel. There is a person in the Bible named Rachel who is supremely celebrated. And however, there's a literal scripture that talks about her beauty. And what am I gonna say? Genesis 29:17. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. You can look it up. I'm not even kidding. Even the Bible knows I'm fine. That's what I wrote. I'm not even kidding. Look it up yourself. The story is the same. In all versions, I'm a hit. Jacob worked 14 years for Rachel, so I know Shorty was a head turner. Might always have to peruse the good book more often. I'm done sitting through sermons that remind me I'll burn soon, never quick enough. Today, the word, TM, shouts me out. Finally, an affirmation crawling under the attacks. I hear your message loud and clear, God. I'm a dime. That is indeed top of the line. Your prophet wrote I'm beautiful and well-favored. Is her name pronounced Leah or Leah? I don't remember. The first half of the scripture is honestly boring, but the second half is a masterpiece. Thank you. Woo, 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 woo. All right, let's get some questions and answers. Oh, perfect. 9 minutes. I tried to stop at like 10 minutes so everybody can have questions. Any questions? Yes. They said, how do I envision what I want to write? That is a great question. I write loudly. So I'll write a sentence where, like, for example, the haircut poem, I'll be like, my mom thinks my haircut is ugly. But then I'm like, and then I'll read it out loud, and then there'll be a next line that comes to me, and then I'll write that next sentence. So my writing process is very loud. And so when people write quietly in a room, I'm like, that's what's up, I'm jealous. So I envision through sound, does that answer your question? Okay, good. Yes. No poem is finished, they're just abandoned. Sorry, that's a cop-out answer. I don't ever set a time limit, because if you notice, some of the poems I wrote were really short, or even the ones that we saw, they were really short, and some were really long. I don't have a set time for it, but I do mull them over. Like, I can't just write a poem in a day and think it's over. I'll revisit it the next day, but it isn't like a 30-minute stopwatch situation. But that is a great question. Yeah, there's no set time for me. Sorry. I saw one more over here, then I'm gonna go to the next section. Okay, we'll go 1, 2, right. Absolutely. Very similar to what inspires me is I read, right? Like, all the great writers are readers. And so, like, it could be like a super heavy chapter book, or and I have on long sleeves and a jacket, but I have like comics tattooed. Like, I think comics are greatly appreciated in the world, right? So I have a penis comic tattooed where Lucy tells Linus to survive. It's really there. I think it came out in 1939. It's like a real thing. And then I have Hobbes on my arm from Calvin and Hobbes. And if you all are Calvin and Hobbes fans, the way Calvin sees the world is just so intense. So when I am not inspired anymore, or if I have writer's block, I read. That's a great question. And we have one over here, and then I'm going to move to another section. That's great. That's a great question. They asked, do I ever think about converting my poems to music? I don't have rhythm. So I don't, but I think that music and poetry are intertwining. They intertwine well into each other. I don't have that skill. I think music is a skill as well as poetry. But I will say that, like, I made a joke where I was like, no one's like, yo, I'm about to relax, and they put on their headphones and bang their head to Shakespeare, right? I think that there's a reason that music and poetry are separated, but I love that they intertwine. I just think it's a skill to get them to intertwine. There's a rapper named Jid in Dreamville who I put his raps in workshops I teach because I think he's a brilliant rapper and a poet. So it just depends. Okay, I spent a lot of time on this side. Anybody in the middle? Yes, we'll go green shirt first, and then the person behind you. Yeah. Like form? That's a good one. I like Pantoums. Pantoum. It is 10 words. Each line has to end with the same 10 words. And it's really intricate. So, like, if it ends with the first line and the last line end with the same word, and then the second line, and then the 8th line, and then it's so hard. But Pantoum, that's my favorite poem. I write a lot of them. Pantoum. Anywhere, actually. Amazon, in your local, I was like, I don't know, I'm in Libertyville. I was like, in your local bookstore in Chicago. But maybe maybe a small bookstore out here has it. And if not, Amazon definitely carries it. Thank you, I really appreciate that. And then there was a person behind you, yes. I'm gonna repeat the question, what brought me to the medium of being a playwright? Very similar to voice acting. Poetry led me to voice acting. I think that all art kind of bleeds into each other. And so I was actually writing something that was not a good poem. Like, I just, for the life of me, could not craft it into a good poem. It was whack. And a mentor actually was like, yeah, that's because it's a play. I think that sometimes, if you try to condense something into, for example, my friend, she's a great artist, and she couldn't figure out how to really get an artist. That's because she tattoos, and it was supposed to go on the arm. I think that art can bleed into a lot of ways. So I got into playwriting because I wrote a really bad and unnecessary poem that ended up being a play instead. I hope that helped. Anyone on this middle section before I move to this side? Yes? What sort of research? It depends. If I'm writing on a historical figure, like in here, I talk about Job a lot. I had to reread the Bible and really research in Google to make sure that I'm not like, Job was this person, and then someone read it and they're like, no, he's not. But if it's like a poem about myself, the only research I do is me. It's in me. But that's a good point. If I'm writing on a historical figure, I do read. All right, anybody on this side? All right, I did a long sweep. Anybody coming back this way? Yes. Great question. I say since I was 10 or 11, I was writing poetry, but it wasn't until I was 12 in 6th grade that I actually performed my poetry. Miss O'Connell, 6th grade, she put her time, part of her lesson aside to let me read my poems. I wasn't the best student, and she did that for me, so really shaped my childhood. I could talk about teachers forever, but she really took time out of her lesson to make sure that I read my poems. So I say 11, 12 is when I really started taking it seriously. Great question. No one answered my question. What are y'all listening to? We got to do hands, though, because y'all can't all shout out. It's me. No, they listen to air on the way home. I get it. AirPods filled with air. No one listens to music now. Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm missing a hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Who? Conan Gray. I actually am familiar with Halsey, and not to be that person where I'm like, I actually just heard about Halsey. I'm actually familiar now. Now we got hands. I'll go one and then back over here. Yes. Yes. You got some taste. All right. I like it. All right.
What do you listen to?
Y'all always flipped it back on me. So someone came up to me last period and was like, I'm about to put you on. I'm like, put me on. And he was like, Kay Trinata. And I was like, that's literally my favorite artist. Kay Trinata, K-A-Y. Anybody know Kay Trinata? Yeah. Kay Trinata is one of I wrote this book to 99.9%, which is No Skips. It's the best album ever. I listen to Saba, S-A-B-A, from Pivot Gang. I'm really like that. And No Name. No Name is a really great artist. All right, you have on a mask, and then the person, and then the blue right after. Miski, yes, that's right. I know that's right. Go ahead. I guess we'll go to the bell goes. Let me know. Go ahead. November Hills? Okay. Oh, that's, okay, you better plug yours. I know that's right. Listen, when all that spells, shout yourself out, November Hills. And that's it. Thank you so much.